And with that, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We really are excited to continue our partnership with the Compassionate Las Vegas series on self-care. So I would like you to please join me in welcoming Will Rucker and Paige Patton.
Thank you so much. So glad to be with each of you again today. We're so excited to be presenting and to be partnering with United Way in this way. I did my best to do green. It's not quite as Irish as yours, but I made an attempt. So hopefully it counts. Let me go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get into the presentation. All righty. So we're really talking about creating a culture of compassion. And just a disclosure, we have no actual or potential conflict of interest in relation to this program or presentation. Paige and I definitely want to acknowledge compassionate integrity training, which was developed through Life University, as we mentioned previously. So just want to give them that acknowledgement. Today is, yes.
Do you want to try and reshare? We're seeing your whole presentation mode.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Mm-hmm. All righty. How about now?
Beautiful. Thanks, Will.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we are actually kind of circling back to our very first foundational skill, which is calming body and mind. And my personal view is calming body and mind is perhaps the single most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and for others. This is a series of 10 skills, the entire program is, and it's broken up into 3 series. So on your screen, just kind of details all that we do. To set our foundation for our conversation today, I'd like to define compassion. And I love this image because to me, this is truly compassion in action, someone helping another person. But we like to define compassion as the wish to alleviate the suffering of another. And this is a key way to distinctively explain compassion, because a lot of us think of compassion as the work that we do or the help that we lend. But compassion in this context is the desire. So an individual could in fact be a compassionate person and never actually move to action. So this helps us to maintain a neutral perspective about each individual, not judging them as, oh, you're not compassionate because you're not doing something. Compassion for us is simply the wish to alleviate the suffering of another, which is a huge way of being. So with that foundation set, I'd like to turn it over to you, Paige.
Excellent, thank you. So it's helpful when we think about tools to help us calm our body and mind. It's helpful to understand a little bit of the basics of what our body and mind are doing when we're triggered. So what our goal is to get into and to stay in this resilient zone. So you might think of, when I ask you, what does resiliency mean to you? A lot of people say, maybe if you think about a rubber band, right? And it's kind of that, like, being able to bounce back, being able to sort of keep moving forward, right? When something happens. So our resilient zone, we're going to define it today as our okay zone, because it's not necessarily our happy place. You can feel sad and still be in your resilient zone. But the main aspect that you want to think about is, do I have a calm and clear presence of mind so that I can respond to any situation according to my values, right? According to how I want to be acting. So I don't know about you, but most days we hit either big or small types of triggers, right? Types of events that knock us out of our resilience zone. So a smooth day would look like this beautiful chart, right? Where we have ups and downs. We want to feel all the ups and downs. That's all fine. But some days we might have a big up or a big down, right? Some days may look a lot like bouncing in between the rails. And what we want to keep in mind is, again, this is okay, this is natural, this is life, right? But what are the tools that we have to get us back into that resilient zone? So when we're bounced up, so to speak, when we're in this high zone, we may be feeling those common feelings of anxiety, anger, irritability, edginess, right? So that's our high zone. And then the other side, our low zone might be sadness, isolation, exhaustion. I love the general meh that people call this, right? It's that feeling of meh. It's that fatigue, the numbness. So again, our goal isn't to reject all of the emotions of life, but our goal is to understand when we get stuck, because being stuck for too long dysregulates our body. So how do we get back into that resilient zone? So that's going to be our goal of the tools that we'll share with you at the end of this session. Let's look a little bit at the nervous system and what's happening when we get bounced up and bounced down. So when we talk about that high zone in the nervous system, we're going to call that being hyper aroused. And then the other side, right, when we're lethargic and motivated, that's hypo aroused. So just a little bit of terminology to understand of how your nervous system is a part of this. And so again, that's your resilience zone, is where you feel your clarity and calm, right? So no matter what is going on externally, you know what's going on internally. Here's what happens with our brain when all of this is going on, when we feel these triggers. So I'm going to use my hand to kind of give us a visual a little bit of what is going on with different parts of our brain. And please grant me some grace if you are a scientist or a doctor and this is your specialty. I'm going to give like kindergarten basic level of this. So here's our brain stem and our cerebellum. And this part we're going to call our survival brain. So this is our instinctual part of our brain. It's mostly connected to previous generations of evolution where, we really relied on this to run from the tiger, right? To escape from whatever danger was there, because that is when your body goes into flight mode, right? Or freeze mode. We're going to call my thumb here. This is our limbic system. In our limbic system, we have what's called the amygdala, which is sort of like a smoke detector, if you will. It's sort of the one that says, alert, alert, danger. And so when our emotional limbic area, and specifically that amygdala, when that is giving the alert signal, that's when the survival brain is going to kick into action, right? So up here, this part of my brain, I'm going to call the cortex. This is our rational thinking brain. Some people may argue that it's the most developed, more recently developed. But the main thing to remember is that this is where we have cognition, our language, our belief system. So if I put all of our pieces together, this is our goal. When all the pieces of the brain are working together, right? This is what we're going to call our resilience zone. But if I flip my lid, if anyone has heard that expression before, you flip your lid. So we're now going to say the cortex, the thinking brain, it's offline. It is no longer working. We are working from a state of just emotion and sensations. And that is what's going on when we feel that fight, flight, or freeze, right? When it's like emergency and our body is all of a sudden doing stuff that we don't even know what's happening, right? So if we look at these next two slides, the autonomic nervous system is this is a part of the that survival brain, right? So it's located in there, and we've got our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. An easy analogy, hopefully easy for you, an analogy that you can use is the sympathetic nervous system is like the gas pedal of a car. Parasympathetic is like the brake pedal. Okay, so we're normally living our day gas pedal, brake pedal, gas pedal, brake pedal, and they're kind of working together. But if something happens and we are all of a sudden on the gas pedal, right? Again, that trigger, that emergency response. Oh man, if that gas pedal goes all the way down, our body is preparing for action. And this is when we feel the heart rate increasing, right? This is when we have shallow breathing, our pupils dilate, we start sweating, right? The stress hormones are activating. Because they're activating, our digestion decreases, our saliva decreases. So some of the major components that we need to live a good life are offline, right? In terms of digestion. That's why a lot of people, their stress lives in their stomach. It makes sense because digestion decreases when we are in an elevated state of panic, anxiety, stress for a very long time. That's our sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system, preparing for rest, right? That's the brake pedal. So that's when all of those other things do decrease. Our breathing rate calms down, our heart rate calms down, our blood pressure, and digestion and saliva increase. So this state of being instead of the fight or flight mode, some people refer to this as rest and digest mode, right? This is where our body is now just kind of recovering and our stomach's coming back online in a way that we need it to. So I say all this to help you understand, again, just our body's physical reaction to not even a real threat, right? A perceived threat, because we are social beings. Being excluded socially from the tribe, if you will, when we think of it in evolutionary terms, being socially excluded like it used to be actually a difference of life or death, right? So even today, if I go have to make a speech on stage, and I'm not actually going to be excluded from the tribe, like in reality, it's not a life or death situation. My body doesn't know the difference. It does not know the difference between real stress because a tiger is about to eat me versus perceived stress of, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious because I have to give a presentation on stage. That's why we feel those things of sweating, increased heart rate, shallow breath, etc. So what do we do to help our body get back into our resilience zone when this is happening? I'll pass it back to Will to bring us home.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Paige. I love the analogy and I love that flip my lid. That one always gets me. But to keep us in this resilient zone, just to reiterate, we want to feel the feelings. I think that it's so critical that we feel what we're feeling. And we have some tools that we'll share today that can help you increase that resilient zone so that it goes from a 2-lane street to like a 10-lane mega highway or something like that. All right, so the first tool that we love to talk about is grounding. I see that most folks are seated right now. Grounding is an activity where you just take notice of the direct contact you're having with an object, and that provides a sense of support or stability. You can ground, of course, in the chair where you're seated right now, just noticing, yes, I'm supported. You may notice your feet on the floor, but you can also do what I do, which is, well, I don't have my blanket anymore, but I had a blanket and I would ground with that, just touching it, just noticing contact with that blanket. Now I do something because my dogs have kind of destroyed my blanket called resourcing. And resourcing is where you bring to mind a person, a place, a thing, a memory, anything that makes you feel calm or pleasant or peaceful, or one of my favorite words, resilient. So even though I don't have that physical blanket, at any time before this presentation, when my technology wasn't working, I said, let me resource for a moment and bring to mind that thing that's pleasant to help me get and stay in that resilient zone. So again, a resource is something that you can just simply imagine. I will note that some resources can push you over a bit outside of that resilient zone. So just as you're thinking about what a resource might be, just be aware that a pleasant memory could have an unpleasant side to it. And so you just want to be mindful. Now, what I'd like us to do together in our last 2 minutes is something called tracking. And tracking is a 3-step process. First, you notice or pay attention to what's happening inside your body at the present moment. So let's just take a moment together and notice what's happening. What is your heart rate like? Are you taking full deep breaths? Are you perhaps maybe uncomfortable in your chair? What's happening in your body right now? Once you notice, determine if that sensation is pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. So for someone that may have chronic pain, there may not be a pleasant area to focus in on, but maybe the bottom of your earlobe is simply neutral. So it's not necessarily pleasant, but it's not unpleasant either. So notice that. And then sitting with this sensation that is either pleasant or neutral, focus your attention there. And when you have that focused attention, you will be able to stay more resilient, calm your mind and body, even if you're experiencing physical pain or emotional pain at the moment. So take about 10 seconds now to just notice a sensation that is pleasant or neutral. It may help to take a soft gaze or even close your eyes. And with your attention on that pleasant or neutral sensation, just be sure to breathe, breathing in fully and deeply and releasing completely. All right. Well, that was just a real fast version of tracking, just so that you could have that experience. And you can use any of those tools at any time. And so today we'll close, as we closed last time, with this wonderful quote. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. And to make this relevant for our particular model today, if you want to be resilient, practice compassion. If you want others to be resilient, practice compassion. And we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone.
That was really, really wonderful. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much, Paige. Will, your voice is very calming, very reassuring. I felt myself being very comfortable. So thank you both so very much. If anyone has any questions for Will or Paige, please put them in chat and we'll be sure that they get those. So thank you for that. That was really, really interesting. And I'll never look at my hand the same again, Paige. All right.